Welcome to Let's Talk BD podcast, powered by the BD School.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk BD podcast. With me today there is Johannes, and we're going to talk a little bit about his experience and anything else that comes to mind when it comes to business development. So without further ado, welcome Johannes. How are you today?
Hi, Lucia. Doing well. Friday morning, my time. Nice to meet you.
Friday night, my time. So I'm not sure how fresh I'm gonna be, but I will try to be very sharp also for this interview. So quite excited and nice to see you. Although we kind of see each other weekly recently, we're gonna uncover something towards the end of this episode, I would say. So stay with us if you want, if you're in for a little treat. But I would say, without further ado, let's talk BD with you, Johannes. And I always like to start actually with a very simple question, which is, what is business development for you?
Very good question. I would say it's where strategy meets execution on the business side. So taking new ideas into opportunities, so doing some conceptual work, and then try to see if they stick in real life, right? So that's how I would phrase it in very simple terms, meaning that business development essentially is a strategy function, but also it's about implementing things, testing the waters, and then scaling up, ideally.
Very good. I like this definition because there is always this a bit of a misconception of BD equals sales, and if someone knows me for a while knows that that really makes me itch. So I'm very happy that you actually describe more as a strategic function. That's a little bit more my view as well. And that actually takes me a bit to the second question. So, of course, you've been now in business development for a while. I think from your LinkedIn profile, your first job was actually in 2011 when you were working for Bosch. You actually worked for Bosch also in China and in Germany, where you're from. Then worked at other companies, among which Deutsche Telekom. You had your own startup. So we are probably seeing business development under very different, let's say, lights. But I'm more curious to know, why did you choose this field in the specific? So how did you come about to entering business development?
That's a very good question. I wouldn't say it's accidentally, but there was a natural progression, I would say. So as you said, I did a lot of internships, tried myself in the finance space, in consulting and all these different areas. I did an internship at a startup. I did work in controlling, so managerial accounting.
I saw that startup, actually. Not sure if you want to talk about it, but I did see that startup.
It was a fun time. So I did an internship at Amorelie in Berlin, and Amorelie is a luxury fashion brand, let's say that. But they also sell things for the bedroom. So it was a lot of fun.
Nice.
So the team set up at the initial stage in the seed phase, where they just got funding in Berlin, and then we scaled up operations with a lot of interns back then. And they had a big exit in 2018, and I think they are very well-known founders as well. Lea Sophie Kramer, who's very active in the German founder space. Sebastian Pollock, who runs his own fund, so he's active as a VC. So they made a great exit, developed a great team and product, and then now they are, I would say, one of among the leading names in the German startup ecosystem.
Oh, very good, very good. So yeah, you were there when they were just starting, and I find business development in the startup phase is always the most exciting, because it's really I find it's you have this box full of tools and ideas, and you can pretty much do everything. So I find that quite exciting. But back to your story about how you enter in BD. Sorry, I took a little bit of a sideway there, but I thought it was interesting.
Yes, absolutely. No, that's definitely was a great time. I started in Deutsche Telekom after my graduation. So I did a master's in management, very broad. So you usually end up in startup as a founder, as a consultant, or in corporate. And Telecom had a great trainee program back then. So I decided to join the management program. And I tested a few different things. I ended up starting in product strategy, product portfolio, which was a lot of fun. I learned a lot on the investment side. How do you structure a portfolio? How do you like test early hypothesis? But you felt a bit removed or too far away from what's actually happening, right? So I want to have this like notion of I want to be there when the execution starts, when it's really about how do we make this happen and how do we bring it to life. So I felt a bit too far away in a big organization, and that's why I think my next role in the corporate, I also did a little bit of my own entrepreneurial journey in between. But when I rejoined the company, it was clear for me that I wanted to be closer to the execution side of things, to really learn how you implement things and how you test and scale new business opportunities. And that led me to our business development and partnerships team, where we essentially built outside of the core business of Deutsche Telekom, where we build new digital business models that are in most cases supported, led, driven by partners. We can probably talk about a few examples, but I wanted to be closer to execution. And with my founder experience, like founder mode is very different to corporate life. Strategy in itself is not valuable unless you are capable of executing it, right? It's the big realization as a founder. And for that reason, it was clear for me that I wanted to be a bit closer to the execution side of things. And now I operate essentially at the interface of BD and product. So we work closely with our product managers, engineers on various different opportunities in the AI space.
Oh, very cool. And actually, I'm very curious to know what does it mean to do business development for Deutsche Telekom? For Deutsche Telekom. I believe it was one of my phone providers when I used to live in Germany. So I'm an old customer, we could say. But of course, I only experienced Deutsche Telekom from this side, right? So I want to get to the juice, really. Like, how do you do business development there? What does it mean to do partnerships? So what do you do basically on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. I relocated to San Francisco. I joined our local team here in 2022, and then the big AI wave came along. Back then we weren't prepared for this big wave, as probably nobody was on the corporate side. We looked into this market from a telco perspective, try to identify what are the areas where we think we can create the most value. And I'd say for a large enterprise like Deutsche Telekom, it was mostly about how do we make sure that we improve productivity and improve efficiency in the organization. And I would say it became quite clear early on that sales and service is a big field for AI, where the technology matches with like our internal demands, and network automation is a big other area where we look into how to leverage AI to make our network more efficient, more robust, and more resilient. So that was the general idea. So we started exploring, like, from a technology angle, with a view on where in our value chain can we actually make the most impact. And based on early hypothesis, we started testing this and came to the realization that there's something there for us. And I think what also helped us is, and I've never seen that, and I've been with the company for quite some time, I've never seen that strong commitment on top management side to push AI across our whole organization. So there's a lot of buy-in and attention. Always attention has two sides, right? So there's a lot of expectation as well. But so far, I think we've been able to cover that quite well. That all led to the creation of a central AI team that's called the AI Competency Center at Deutsche Telekom, where I'm part of in the partner stream, and where we bring in partners and vendors in order to help implement and scale AI use cases across the whole Deutsche Telekom organization.
Oh, that's very good. So it really looks like, so basically the applications of AI, they're really meant to improve the operations at Deutsche Telekom, if I understand correctly, right?
Yes, that's one central item, and then I would say the more natural BD role is on the consumer side, where we build together with partners like Perplexity. We just launched a proposition with Perplexity in November 2024, where we built propositions for our European markets, European mass consumer markets, with the help of partners. And this is where the more classical BD partnerships role comes into play. Given that, I think this is an interesting piece. Given that the focus is on AI, and we were looking at this with the technology angle, I have a dual role, I would say. So on the one hand side, I focus on tooling for internal use cases that can be for the end user, like for marketing or for our lawyers, or for developer tools. This is more, I would say, a vendor relationship role kind of that we have. And then on the other side, you have, like, for joint go-to-market, you have a more partnerships-driven BD role. Ultimately, our goal for these two levers is to massively improve our free cash flow. We laid out a big number at our capital markets last year that we want to achieve by 2027. I think there's a lot to be done here. Yeah, so I would say we support this in two ways. On the one hand side, to secure free cash flow growth for the organization. We have internal tooling where we support on vendor scouting, vendor selection, in order to drive the most meaningful AI initiatives. And then on the other hand side, we have the more classical BD partnerships role where we build joint propositions with partners, and then we take them to our European markets.
Great. And actually, now that you were talking, about like how innovative eventually Deutsche Telekom is, that actually got me thinking because, well, you're from Germany. I used to live in Germany for a while. And for my experience, at least from the, let's say, vendor perspective, let's say, trying to enter the German market, my experience has always been that Germany doesn't seem to be very, how do I put this? I don't want to be conservative, let's put it that way. Like they tend to be more on the conservative side, right? Which for me is also a little bit like, it's interesting because, well, we have this image of Germany, it's one of the biggest economical powers of Europe. It has always been, but I find it to be very conservative when it comes to new technologies and so on. Is my impression like founded on something real, do you think, or is just really my bias?
I would say compared to other countries in Europe and especially to the US, we are definitely more on the concern side of things, right? So risk aversion is a big part of our culture. And I think that you definitely have a point there. Having said that, in the case of AI at Deutsche Telekom, I witnessed quite the opposite, right? So there's a lot of risk-taking, making bold moves. We were like announcing at our, like, one of the biggest industry events last year, we were announcing the launch of the AI phone, where we together with partners built a device that will be launched later this year, being like one of the first telco in the world to do this, right? So that's a very bold move in the consumer space, I'd say. So quite the opposite. And I think key part of that is, as I said, is really this top management buy-in and relentless execution that is driven by teams like our AI competency center. So I think a lot of it comes together there. The top management understands the technology and its impact on us, and not only us, but also like the broader German European society. They take a very active stance in terms of being open-minded about new technology. So I would say Deutsche Telekom's leadership is really the exception of the rule for German society here, and I'm happy to be part of that organization, as you can do a lot of things that wouldn't be possible in many other established companies.
Yeah, totally. And like besides the management, which is very receptive, obviously, to new technologies and quite futuristic, I would say, right, in their ambitions. What other elements do you think of Deutsche Telekom really empowered the company to be so, forward when it comes to new technologies? Are there other elements of it that you recognize?
That's an interesting point. I think especially if we take a little step back to the 2000s, right? So internet era just started, and after the dot-com crisis, when all the stocks crashed, right, there were these huge platforms that were being built on top of our infrastructure, right? So the Googles, the Metas of this world, they built hugely scalable products on top of our infrastructure. And we were just not part of the value chain directly anymore, right? So we call them over-the-top players as they use our infrastructure for free, essentially, to scale up their business models. And there were many cases in the 2000s, like the Nokia cases, like one of the most famous examples, right? Who missed essentially the smartphone era. And as like we saw the rise of these digital giants, and we couldn't quite do much about it, right? In terms of capturing market share in this newly market on top of our infrastructure. While seeing companies like Nokia, who were like super strong like a few years ago, and then all of a sudden they were in the consumer space, they are pretty much non-existent anymore, right? And based on these realizations, I think we draw the right learnings from this to see whenever there's a new platform shift, and I think AI is like one of the new platforms that is emerging, that we need to be there early and that we need to make bold moves. Not jeopardizing our core business or not jeopardizing our brand reputation, right? So we are among the top global brands together with T-Mobile, and we cannot jeopardize that. But as long as we build upon our core business, leverage our strengths, there is a huge potential to capture growth in new emerging technologies. And I think, given the prospects of AI, I think we caught the wave at the right time.
Yeah, totally. And I really like, what you said, we really learned from that mistake, because I think it's really the essence of business development at the end. There are like opportunities, like they're literally in your face all the time, but it's really about us, whether we want to seize them or not, right? So that's a very interesting case study. And, just talking a little bit more about your experience, because obviously you worked at big corporates, but you also worked in different countries. Again, you're from Germany, now living in the US, in the heart of AI, I would say, so in the Silicon Valley. You also had a brief experience in China. How is business development, in these different places? Like what were the differences that you experienced in these different countries?
So starting with the US, and I probably cannot speak too much about China because I was in a different role back then. But in the US, I would say it's always focused on doing business together. So that means essentially, hey, I have an opportunity to work together. Let's collaborate and see how we both can participate in that. So there's a lot of openness to do business and openly talk about business. So I think there is a lot of entrepreneurial culture and spirit, especially here on the West Coast in San Francisco and the Bay Area, like in the heart of Silicon Valley, so to say, but also beyond in the US. I would say there's a lot of focus on building businesses, and this mindset is not necessarily in Germany or in Europe, right? So I think, and this is a huge asset in Silicon Valley. People openly share their ideas and talk about things, right? And this is not necessary. It's starting to change.
People are always scared here. It's like, even like, I mentor a lot of startups, and even at the very early stages of startups that are not necessarily that innovative, there is really this fear of talking to people, because otherwise they're going to steal your idea, which, I mean, nowadays with AI, you could literally build 10,000 companies in 2 minutes if you really wanted to, probably. So it's not really like that's much of a secret, right? And actually, if you talk about your ideas with other people, you might actually enrich it and make it better. But yeah, that's very true here. Like we don't have this, let's say, collaborative approach that much.
It's just about open sharing and with like the business mindset, right? And this business mindset is also something I'm a business, like I studied management, right? So of course we have a business mindset, but executing on that mindset is very different in the US than in Germany. There's, I would say there's like you are way more careful approaching other people, other companies, and I mean outside of our partnering organization, right? So we have a very strong open collaboration, partnering with other companies. We have a very strong mindset in our team on that, right? So, but that doesn't represent like the standard of Deutsche Telekom or of like the broader German company space. But there's definitely this element of strong business mindsets, meeting very open collaboration, and then creating value ultimately. And creating value is all about execution again, right? And sometimes if you have like number one, the mindset, you have number two, like you to openly talk about it and you're trying to create joint opportunities. Usually you end up getting stuck at number three, trying to create value in real life, right? So I think the number one, number two, that's a cultural thing. Number three is then just raw execution again. And this is where most partnerships or BD efforts get stuck at sometimes.
Yeah, totally. Especially in terms of partnerships, I have to say. And I've been in that situation many times at different companies as well. There was always this, like, I find a lot of excitement at the beginning when you meet someone new and it's like, oh yes, I can see, like how we could collaborate and so on. But then there isn't really this willingness to actually make things happen. It's more about super nice on paper, but then when we actually have to do things, that's where these partnerships get a little bit shaky. While I find, especially in your case, well, you mentioned already some names. I'm very curious to know a little bit more about that. But you mentioned Perplexity and so on. There seemed to be really this openness, right, that you're mentioning. And really, like, more than the openness is actually the getting things done mentality, right? It's just like, okay, let's do it, and let's put it in practice. Otherwise, we're all wasting time pretty much.
Absolutely. And I think Perplexity is the best case for that. So if you take a look at who they partnered up with in the past year, they've been doing deals with Uber, with all the large telcos. They've been very, very active. I think even in like one of the newsletters that I've seen, you can get a Perplexity Pro subscription if you sign up for it. So they do a lot of partnerships with a very small go-to-market team, and they've been able to execute super well, especially in that side, right? If you are a small startup and your vision is ultimately to compete with Google, which is essentially the default company in the search and knowledge space these days, you need to partner up with companies that have an interest in leveling the playing field again, right? So I think they made some very good moves. We are now also a proud investor in Perplexity, so we doubled down.
Nice.
We doubled down on their vision, and the team has been phenomenal, both on the technology side. They've made some recent announcements on like with deep research. I don't know if you've seen that, where you
I did see some news.
where you have like probably the best AI researcher, or like on par with OpenAI, with Google, in the Perplexity subscription. So amazing on the tech side. And then they have a very action-oriented, execution-oriented go-to-market team, just like gets deals done. So they have a extremely interesting setup at the moment, where both product and tech and go-to-market BD work together amazingly well and just outspeed the competition, I would say. So the speed that at which they operate, both product tech and also go-to-market and BD, I think is outstanding.
Yeah, and I mean it's super smart, right? If you think about it, like especially if you're like if you have constraints in terms of the team, right, which was apparently very small. If you want to accelerate, partnership is the best way of doing that, right? Obviously, looking for strategic partners that can accelerate that, right? So without wasting too much time on smaller players. Hence Deutsche Telekom for them. But yeah, absolutely, very smart, a very smart move. And obviously, well, you talked with Perplexity, you talked with Anthropic, and all these other big companies. Which one is your favorite of these new AI companies, if there's any?
Ooh, that's hard to say. I would think like that depends a bit on the use case. I would say so. Definitely Perplexity. Although I must say I'm a bit biased, as you can
A little bit, but I love them too. And the reason why I love them is that they actually brought us a lot of customers, among which I think you also found us on Perplexity. So I love them. I absolutely love them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's essentially the new
Search engine,
search
totally.
platform, right?
Yeah.
Find out more about.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, that's very funny. So let's tell the story later. That's how we got in touch ultimately via Perplexity.
Yeah.
So this is definitely one of my top three apps that I'm using on a daily basis. Every time I'm like trying to get some inspiration, this is my go-to place now. What I also love that's a free app is the 11 Reader app from 11 Labs, where you can create podcasts just by inserting a PDF or sending a link, and then in 2 or 3 minutes they create the digestible 10 minutes podcast on the subject for you to go. So every time you have a lengthy, I don't know, you see this like this read is like 30 minutes, and you're like, is that really worth it? You can just take the link, insert it into the app, and then you get a podcast, like a summary podcast version with two hosts talking to each other within a few minutes. That's really cool.
It's insane. I actually tried the 11 Labs voice generator, and I was like, oh, let me play around, So I dubbed myself in Italian. I'm Italian, so I really wanted to see how accurate it was, and in French, and it was freaky. It was really, first of all, like it was so fast, but then it was so freaky to hear my voice, dubbed, and it's like, well, you can hear that it's an AI, but it's so close to my voice, It was really weird, it's which it opens up a whole new topic, I think, in terms of like really like deep fakes and this kind of things, but that's probably for another time. But what is your other tool? So we have Perplexity, 11 Labs, and
Yeah, I would still say that's the boring part. I would still say ChatGPT is amazing with all the news, right? So that's not a big surprise. So number 3 would be definitely still ChatGPT. Although I must say, as Perplexity now, like they have all the models from OpenAI as well, right? I tend to lean at the moment. I tend to lean more towards Perplexity because they were able to build a censorship-free DeepSeek model into their platform. So they launched it, I don't know, a few days after the DeepSeek model was announced and was live. And they were able to deliver a censorship-free version of it based out of the US, I think. So I think in terms of optionality, I would prefer
much more.
Perplexity. But definitely, I mean, the first time I used ChatGPT, I think everyone remembers that, right? All of a sudden, you see something is being created when I insert a question, when I prompt it. I've never seen that before. As nobody, right? As like really a first for me. I still remember that it was like, wow. And then you start testing it, and then you see, oh, you can do all that with it, right? So I can draft all my emails now with Perplex. Of course, I'm not doing that in the business context, but you can draft emails, you can ask any question. That was amazing.
Totally. And do you remember was the first thing you asked to ChatGPT? I don't think I remember. But I'm gonna check my history after. Now I'm curious. Now you got me curious. But yeah, that's amazing. And like really, also in terms of business development, I think there is so much that we can automate with AI. And I mean, even just with the most basic version, which is really like I think how most of us use it as of now, it's just really like just give it a prompt, like depending on how creative you are, you can get more out of it. But I think we're really just scraping the surface there in terms of really how much we can use it. And but really, what are your business development tasks or processes or parts of the process that you somewhat automated with the AI, if there are some?
That's an interesting question. So we are currently experimenting with agents. Have a researcher agent together with a partner, obviously, right? So I'm a partnering guy. So we are experimenting there to understand how we can automate research tasks. That's still very early stage, but like I want to understand more about what market do you want to pick? The construction business, right? So let's just pick a random one. I have no idea. I want to understand what are my key opportunities as a new entrant into the space. And then you can just ask the research assistant, and then within 2 days, they are able to compile a report where you have humanly verified report that is high quality, where you get the top use cases, the top opportunities, and you understand the key players in the space. That platform is called Entrepreneur. We can add that in the show notes. I think that's interesting for all BD folks, right? So if you want to understand the market, if you want to understand like the players in the market and potential opportunities, that's a very good starting point. And I've been testing like a little bit with it in terms of how would it work? Does it really fulfill my needs, right? It's very custom for everyone in the BD landscape. So I don't have a final view on it, but I'm it so far. So it's really interesting.
Nice.
And I mean, they came up with estimates, right? Within 2 days, you get the work that would have needed 700 hours to complete all of that in that quality, right? That's insane.
Yeah.
You would never be able to spend 700 hours just on this one report.
Totally.
To read through all the sources and then consolidate what is most essential. You know the standard market research. Just forever, and tools like that are really helpful to get more productive and get started immediately, right? So that, and then the second, I'd say, landscape of tools that I'm currently exploring is full stack app development tools. Full stack app development, yes. And there you get you have an idea and you get a first prototype within, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, an hour, depending on the complexity and how you can tweak it. And there I've been experimenting with tools like Replit, Lovable, and Bold that help you get from idea to product prototype within, let's say, less than a day, right? And then you can deploy it, and then you can start like testing and seeing if there's any, like, what the users think about your idea, right? So this is nice to get started. This is really amazing. And like the time savings, I mean, this example with 700 hours, you would never do that, but you save so much time using these tools just to get kick-started. And then the human element comes into play, right? You still need to understand, okay, how can I optimize this? Is this what the report says really relevant for my case, given my resources, given my market positioning, right? So it's still a lot of work, but I always think about this as you have a junior researcher or you have a junior developer that helps you build things, and they get you to 80%, right? There's still some stuff that you need to tweak and that you need to improve on, as always. But in order to speed up your game in BE, I think tools like these are really helpful for you.
Totally. And now just you mentioned, of course, the human element. And I want to talk a little bit more about the human aspect of business development, because obviously tools are great, but at the end of the day, business development is all about human relations, right? So at the end, even your deal with Perplexity, right, and Deutsche Telekom now investing in it, wouldn't have happened if there wouldn't have been people, right, interacting and so on. So my next question is really like, How do you get in touch with these people? Considering also that for how long do you live now in the US? When did you move?
I moved in 2022 and I started the
Oh,
job in November.
oh, right. Yeah, perfect. So it's been like 2.5 years, more or less,
Yeah.
almost 3 years. So you were brand new there, right? So you probably had to build your network, get, build your credibility. Obviously, you have Deutsche Telekom behind, so it's definitely a big brand. Everybody knows it, but still, you had to, let's say, be known by people there. So how did you manage that, right? So how did you manage to get off the ground, getting to know people in this, magical world of Silicon Valley, which I think for a lot of us is like seems this, they're just genius walking around all the time. So how was your experience? And had there maybe some tactics and strategies that you used to build this network that worked out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are, of course, we had a good starting point as the office was already there, right? So my team had been in the beginning also to establish some links and get started. I must say the density of talent, that's like a brain power per square foot, I think, is pretty unique here, right? So I meet companies on a daily basis, right? So I have a privilege of like scouting the latest and greatest in AI, and pretty much everything happens between Berkeley and San Jose. So the San Francisco Bay Area, the Silicon Valley is really as dense as it gets in terms of talent and openness to share, as we talked about, right? So openness in terms of collaboration, in terms of ideating together is really this is I think the superpower. So brain power meets openness, and collaboration meets execution power again, right? So unforeseen execution power obviously is also, there's a big capital component to it. So all the biggest VCs are also in that area. So this ecosystem that everybody talks about, that's a thing that works, right? So
You see it, you feel it.
exactly, you have all the building blocks in place. So we had an innovation office already here. So my colleagues helped me in the beginning. Plus, you have this huge, like, strong ecosystem that is already live and vibrating for, I don't know, 50, 60 years, right?
Yeah.
So you have very good fundamentals. How do you access that? Starting with my colleagues, of course, so the leveraging the existing links, and then a lot of it is really through networking. So that was like the superpower that I am developing here is really networking. This is essentially from attending meetups and events. Like you can imagine, every night there is a meetup on AI in San Francisco, the Bay Area. So you can meet people every day, right? And also there are institutions like Product Hunt that help you understand like the next tools that are being launched, like
thing, yeah.
latest products. Y Combinator's here with the best,
Of course.
the best startups in a batch, right? That you can meet essentially every day in San Francisco, and a few others, right? So you have you can get access and get in touch with the best people in a very easy manner, because everybody's very approachable, very smart. And most people are very humble as well. So I like that combination.
It's interesting. It's like I think maybe there is a bit of a bias. At least when I think about the Silicon Valley, like obviously the first people that come to mind, they're like the Zuckerbergs and the Google people and so on. Which to me, it's like, wow, these are super smart people and I don't know, super unreachable and so on. So it's interesting to know that actually normal people, very humble and very approachable. And of course, from all what you told us in this episode, like it seems to be super open and very open to collaboration, right? So that's very interesting. Like, what type of people are they? Like, let's say when you go to these meetups, like, what happens at these meetups?
Yeah, so a lot of them are developers, right? So yeah, you cannot chat too deeply about technology with them because they are like miles ahead, right?
Too much.
But always, like, if you share ideas or just talk about latest trends, they are very like opinionated, right? So you need to have an opinion about things. That's important if you want to if you want to stick, if you want to be reminded, right? So opinion doesn't hurt here. And also, like, trying to catch what is next, right? Thinking ahead. Like,
Mhm.
you have this product now. How do you take this to the next level, right? So I think this usually helps a lot. And then, of course, Deutsche Telekom brand helps a lot in accessing companies, right? So I think I was never turned down with a meeting request in my 2.5 years here, right? So you're not
But
necessarily meet the CEO in the first meeting, but you definitely get access to the companies, and it helps a lot.
Yeah, that is also something I really love about doing business with American companies or, just Americans in general, but based off the US, let's say, because there is everything. But it's really it's so much easier to do business. First of all, they really get to the point much faster. And there is really this attitude, which is really like, okay, let's find solutions. Whereas in Europe, sometimes it's really about let's find the problems and then let's not fix the problems and let's just stop talking. It's like there is really this attitude of like, it's almost like here, like you have to earn every single, like a little bit of attention from companies, from people. Whereas every time I do business with the US, it's so much easier and smoother. And I don't know, it's really like this attitude of like, okay, let's see what we can do. It's really like there is really a world of opportunities, it feels. And I can imagine that probably living in the Silicon Valley is definitely palpable, this feeling.
Yeah, as the German here, I think there's also like the other side of the coin that we should consider. I'd say sometimes it's a bit ruthless here, right, in terms of competition,
Yeah.
and the big guys eating the small guys ultimately. So there's that. So it's a very capitalist society and ecosystem, of course,
Yeah.
that has its pros and its cons, right? The relationships that you build in Germany and Europe, they are built on strong personal links that take time to develop. Here,
Yeah.
it's about you ideate, you meet people, the standard one, like Americans tend to be a bit superficial from a European perspective, right? In a business world, excuse me, in a business world, that means that it tends to be transactional, right? So do you really understand their intents and their agenda? You will get a feeling for it when you're in Europe. Here, it's a bit harder to understand what is underlying this motivation, right? So what is the underlying motivation? That's a bit harder, I would say. So it's more ruthless in the setup. It's a bit more transactional, I would say. And the third one I would add here is, especially when you talk to sales guys here in Silicon Valley, it's always this huge story, right? So it's always this: we will heal cancer for you if you move our AI, right? And we operate in a very different space. So it's a lot of marketing that you need in order to, like, you get attention here, because there are so many different things happening, right? And everybody gets excited about like another topic next week again. So it's so hard to get attention that you need to really like market
The
yourself.
extra, right? Which, yeah, I have to say it is something though that I don't particularly like. And I mean, at the end of the day, if we look at like big cases like the Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, right? That's exactly what happened. And I don't know if you saw it on LinkedIn, but lately there are these memes going around, which is the Forbes 30 under 30, and every year there is one of them that gets put in jail because they did something outrageous, And I think, I mean, obviously it can happen everywhere, but I feel in Europe it's a little bit less because, well, I don't know if it's like in all the countries, but I think we have, I don't want to say that we're more humble, but I think maybe more than humble is that, I don't know, it's just like we're not super sure of everything, so we just have to, we kind of validate more and we really get confidence as we build things. Whereas in the US, I find it's a bit the other way around, right? So it's really about the idea and how genius it is and how like the impact it can have, but then it doesn't necessarily translate in reality. So that's true that there's a bit of a fine line there, which I think would be nice to have a bit of a mix probably. And I mean, I live in the Netherlands and here it's like, it's all about, work, put your heads down, it's like, you don't show off too much, humble, you just do your work, so it's very different. And then I'm from Italy, and in Italy we have a bit the syndrome of a bit of the Cinderella, I think. It's like, okay, well, we have to earn our respect and our place in the world, which again, I think a very opposite word in that sense.
I would say, yeah, absolutely. I would say to conclude here, in the US, confidence is based on vision, and in Europe, confidence is based on facts. Tends to be based on facts, right? So
Yeah.
tendencies. So you are here. You are confident because you believe in your vision, and in Germany, in Europe, you are confident because you have facts that prove that, right? So
Yeah.
I would say, in my day to day, it's always a bit about understanding to what degree they oversell, or to what degree, well, what is actually there, right? So what is the delta between marketing and product? And usually you need to find like what the gap looks like exactly. So that's part of my discovery calls, to understand who's really there, like to manage expectations also on their side, right? If a large enterprise calls you and it's like, hey, let's have a meeting, that's cool, but the question is, do we really want to work with you? And if you are overselling and you don't really have a product, or like if these two don't really match well, then of course we're not interested to pursue anything further.
Totally. And Johannes, I'm just checking the time, and I think we've been talking for more than 1 hour, and I guess you also have to get back to work. But we promised something at the very beginning, which was a little announcement at the end. Since we talked a lot about AI, there was a lot of the conversation actually that was around that. If there was something else, anything else that you could do rather than being a business development pro at Deutsche Telekom right now, and something you could talk about for hours, what could that be?
Yeah, exactly. So based on how we met, right? We met over Perplexity essentially. So I was looking for networking courses to get from average to top notch, right? That was the goal. And I was researching on Perplexity, and I found the networking course from Lucia, which, by the way, I can highly recommend in order to
Thank you. Very nice assist there.
to improve. Yeah, that's the advertisement.
Little ad.
But it helped me a lot to understand what are the key levers and how do I get this in a more systematic, structured way. That's how we met. And then we were chatting about your podcast as well. I was talking about the 11 Reader app that I liked on podcast creation. We looked into the market, right? It's the podcasts in the AI space that exist right now. Some very tech focused, very like news oriented, and very much focused on AI experts, right? And how do people get started in AI if you are not an expert, right? And want to have that in a snackable format like a podcast, to understand things, to get practical advice, to get like some insights into like the humans behind the AI. And that's why Lucia and I have the idea to start a podcast together.
I mean, we have the idea. We're actually started already. So I hope you actually enjoyed this episode, because it was also a bit of a trial, right? So I hope you enjoyed listening to us, because soon we're going to come up indeed with a new podcast. I guess we can say the name already. It's we secured all the social handles. So you can actually go on our YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, look for AI to Go podcast. And just start following us, because the first episodes are going to come really soon. And obviously, thanks to Johannes and the work that is put in for Deutsche Telekom in the Silicon Valley, and the networking course, obviously, that help you meet all these people. We're actually able to, we have a very nice lineup of interesting guests. So let's see. We don't want to say too much, but you're going to hear from us soon, and a lot. So, prepare your headset, because we're going to be there with you every time that you need us. But for now, Johannes, thank you so much. At the beginning of the episode, we said, okay, for how long should it try? And we said, well, let's just go, But I realized we could be talking for hours, and luckily we do have another platform to do that. So thank you so much for sharing all your insights, tips, knowledge, and very thought-provoking thoughts here. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and well, I will see you soon. And to everyone listening, make sure to subscribe to our channel, to Spotify, so you don't miss any of our uploads. And bye for now.
Thank you, Lucia. See you soon.
Subscribe and listen to more episodes of Let's Talk BD podcast.